Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health and well-being podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every single one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. And I'm so grateful today because we don't do this often, but now and again, every few years, we end up having a guest that comes on twice. And this is one that I'm really, really excited about. Now, this guest who came on last year completely blew our minds. It was one of our most popular podcast downloaded last year. So you're in for a real treat. And today's is even more practical, tactical, and useful for you. So I know that you're going to get a lot of value from it. So I want to get your pens out, your pads out. I want you to be taking notes and ready to learn from none other than Ray Dalio. In 1975, Ray Dalio founded an investment firm, Bridgewater Associates, out of his 2-bedroom apartment in New York City. 40 years later, Bridgewater has made more money for its clients than any other hedge fund in history and grown into the 5th most important private company in the United States, according to Fortune magazine. Ray himself has been named to Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people in the world. He's the #1 New York Times bestselling author of one of my favorite books, Principles. And today we will be talking about his new personal discovery tool, Principles U, which I cannot wait for you to try out. And we'll be putting the link for you to try it out in the caption. And it's built with the insights from his unbelievable career. And we'll also be talking about his new book, The Changing World Order: Why Nations Succeed and Fail. Ray, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so happy to be speaking with you again.
Oh, I'm excited to be back. They're always good conversations. So let's do it.
Yeah, last time we were together in New York City, and it's a different setup this time. I'm over in LA. I'm guessing you are in New York still. Is that right?
I'm in Connecticut.
Oh, you're in Connecticut. Okay, perfect.
My home in Connecticut.
Absolutely. Beautiful. And today we're diving into this fascinating conversation that I'm really excited to have with you, because when you first brought this to my attention and your team brought it to my attention, and I remember emailing back and forth with your team, and I was just elated because I have found personal discovery tools and personality tests to be so foundational in so much of my career. And at times, some of the ones that I've done have been groundbreaking for me, which have just helped me focus in on my true strengths and talents and skills. And now as I go on to the next stage in my career and entrepreneurship journey of hiring people and building my team, we're about 50 people across the world right now. And as that continues to develop, I'm so excited to use this tool for that reason. But I want to start off by asking you, what was the first tool you ever did? And what did it teach you about yourself? Or what did you learn about yourself?
I'd say it was, 20, 25 years ago. I was running the company and I understood that people were different. And I got exposure at that time to Myers-Briggs. And I gave it to the top 150 managers. So we got the test, ripped back. I read the results. And in many cases, I couldn't believe that people actually thought the way that they were described, that they think. And yet they were asked to rate the quality of the rating of them from 1 to 5. And 85% rated it a 4 or a 5. That said, that is me. So, whoa. And that prompted conversations. What are you like? What? And that changed everything. It had a big impact. The reason was, up until that point, people who thought differently than each other often got frustrated with each other. You know, the big picture thinker dealing with the person who paid attention to details would get frustrated. They'd say, what are you caught up in the details? And the detail person, speaking with the big picture thinker, would say, your head's in the clouds. And what we began to realize when we started to correlate that data with job performance is that people excelled in different types of jobs, depending on what they needed, what they were like. And also, we were able to put them together to work well together. They began to appreciate the differences, understand the differences, and build from there. So that got me hooked. It was much more valuable than resumes. I'm not saying resumes aren't, but it was helpful for their development and for us for placing them. And I'd say that was about 20 or 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I love hearing that. It's been the same for me. I found that, as you dive into these understandings, you realize people communicate differently, people deal with conflict differently, people connect and create rapport differently. And that's what these tools are so great at showing us, that actually ideal teams and good teams have people of all different types of thinking.
Absolutely. And then beyond that, well, like you took the test, other people took the test, and they understand now where they are in the population distribution, because even when they understand how they think, often they don't fully understand it. But even when they do, they don't know the weaknesses and how to deal with the weaknesses, and they don't know how to deal with each other. So what we found is when we could take a picture, we have diagrams that represent how somebody is in different dimensions. And when we overlay that on top of another diagram of another person, we know how they're going to interact. We know what the issues will be, and we can then build on that. So, yeah, I mean, it's like I don't know how long it took you to take it, maybe 40 minutes or something. I don't know. That's what most people take. And then boom, they get it. So yeah, it's invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've already shared with everyone. I wanted to tell everyone I have done the test, so I will be sharing my results. So I want you to keep listening to this podcast. If you're listening or watching right now, I will be sharing a few insights from the test, from my own reflection and reflecting on it with Ray. So that's going to be really fascinating. So stick around for that. But Ray, I wanted to ask you, how do you start building a tool like this? Because it's very difficult. And as you've seen over the last 25 years since you've been exposed to this, learning, building, you've been hiring, building teams. How do you go about actually building a tool like this to make it as accurate as possible in a way that you're really proud of taking out to the world right now?
Well, we started, then I wanted some other tests, and they would give me different dimensions of about a person. So I wanted those different dimensions. And then we would use that data to compare with how they were performing in different types of jobs. And we're going to get into the dot collector later, but that'll be an example. And so we found it very valuable. And then naturally, I was working with psychometricians about this, partially to understand it, and then partially to build it. And what I decided to do was to build one test that would have all that the other tests had, plus some more. And so I brought on these three psychometricians who were fabulous, and we discussed, just built the test. And I'm now at a stage of my life that I'm passing along the things that have been valuable. So I'm passing it along to people for free so that they could take it and benefit from it.
Before we share my results and get into my insights, I'd love to hear your advice on how you recommend people approach the questions in this test. Because what I find is that a lot of people, when they're faced with questionnaires like this, they either overthink it, they answer too quickly, sometimes they aren't self-aware enough to really put the best answer out there. How do you answer this in the most authentic, accurate way so that it actually helps you with self-awareness and understanding?
Pretty much just relax and do it naturally, whatever feels right. We haven't had much of a problem with people getting either anxious or even trying to manipulate it or anything. But if you just answer the questions in the best possible way, don't worry about perfectionism. There are a number of questions that get at the same basic idea. And so there's some triangulation. Just go with it and have a good time with it. Most people have a good time with it.
That's great. Yeah, no, I found that sometimes some of these tests, people are writing down what they think they are versus what they do in reality. And there's that discrepancy of like how we think or how we think we behave. But actually, when we look at our actions, they suggest otherwise. So
yeah, I think it's just going to, like, it'll ask you the equivalent of, do you like chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream? Just don't think about it too much. Just, what do you like? That's pretty much it.
That's a good analogy. I like that one. And what's your hope for people? Like you said earlier, and we're going to talk about this later, about how you're at a stage in your career where you're passing things on that you've learned. What is your biggest intention and hope that when someone uses this, what are you wanting them to get out of it?
First of all, discovering of themselves, and then the discovery of the difference in people and the relationships they have with other people to make those relationships better, work better. So personal discovery will help them. They'll know what they have and what they're missing. And by knowing what they're missing, they'll be able to supplement it and be more successful. And then in the relationships with others, those things that might be confusing or frustrating can be turned into being efficient. So it's great. That's what I hope. That's what I hope to give people.
That's a great hope. You said to me earlier, I think before we started recording, that you had your wife do it. Does it help in marriage and relationships too? Is it something we can apply to dating, and should be people using it in those relationships?
Absolutely. And it also helps you, know how to talk about it. There was a test out there after we did this that one of my daughter-in-laws had us do over a holiday, and we don't use it. It's not part of this test, but it was an example. It was the 5 types of love.
Yes.
Okay, you know the test.
Yeah.
And that was a good example. How you speak and interact and what the other's looking for is very, very helpful, very valuable, right? It's 40 minutes. This isn't like a big commitment. So people have also had a lot of fun with it, because when they take theirs and they overlap the others on it and the group, this is what I gave you, and what your listeners are going to be able to take is a beta version of it, which doesn't yet have all of the interactions with others yet built out. We'll have that. And if they leave their names when we have that other feature, we'll get it to them. But we're operating that way, and it's fun. People laugh because we had a group session with family, and I have 4 sons, 4 daughter-in-laws, and so on. And everybody, it was funny because it said, "Oh, that's right. That's how it works, and that's why it works in that relationship." So they can be fun as well as insightful.
Yeah, you mentioned to me last week when we were catching up about this that you even sent it to Elon Musk and Bill Gates. Tell us about some of the things that surprised them, or something that you want to share about those reflections that were useful and impactful for you.
Well, I wanted to get the profiles of a certain type of person, a shaper. In other words, someone who was great at visualization and then built it out to actualization. So like Elon Musk has done, or Bill Gates has done, or, many people. I can rattle off, but very, very the most successful. And I wanted to get that because I wanted to hire one of those. So what is the pattern of the preferences? Shapers, I call them. What is the pattern of those types of people? I wanted that DNA basically. And that's what I got. So there are all these different personality types, but that shaper has distinctive qualities that only a small percentage of the population has it, but almost everyone who is doing that kind of thing, visualizing a business and I did it also for Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for microfinance. I did it for Jeffrey Canada, who is Harlem Children's Zone, built this fabulous institution for dealing with poverty. The patterns are clear.
There's a lot of different personality archetypes in your world. So you have creators, enthusiasts, influencers, givers, organizers, leaders, fighters, growth seekers, thinkers. So anyone who does this test, you're going to find that. And what I found most fascinating was when you start going inside of your, what you call the cognitive orientation. So if you don't mind, let's take a deep dive in some of my results that came out from the test, if that sounds like a good idea for you, Ray, right now. And you can guide me through this. And this is, I consider myself very fortunate, first of all, to be doing this with you personally. So I don't take this for granted. This is like, sitting down with the sage and the guru and the mentor, and to be guided personally through this. So when I look at my interpersonal orientation, so this is my cognitive orientation, how you prefer to think. So my creative is 99%. It's very high. I'm guessing that's a good thing for what I do.
You've pursued what you're like, right? And a creator is not better than anything else other than creating, So it may be the opposite of somebody who wants to be really reliable, meticulous, and is really rule following, which can be fabulous for certain jobs. You want those people in certain jobs. So yes, that's your inclination. You like to let your mind go wild, and you want to have great imagination, and you like creating. Okay, the act of creating, and that feels true to you. So think of it almost like the food you like to eat. It's not that, if you ate Italian food or Chinese food or Indian food or something, it's not better. It just is a strong preference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would have to fully agree with that assessment. I consider myself someone who deeply is an artist and a creative at heart, but has had to develop entrepreneurial skills to be able to spread that message, if that makes sense.
That comes across in the other dimensions of your test, because in many cases, there are these creators who don't accomplish anything. And sometimes they just don't have a sense of the practicality, all that's necessary to be as creative as they can, or to accomplish as much as they can. So it's in the mix.
Absolutely. And that's why I found when I look at analytical here, it says you tend to be methodical and process-oriented with a tendency to rely on personal instinct when reaching decisions and making choices. So my analytical is 60%, which I love that it was able to be so specific, because I really do trust my intuition in decision making. And I consider myself to be an intuition person. So I like to look at the data, but I like to make a decision based on my intuition, not based on the data alone.
Well, you can hear how that sentence that it gave you is so clear, and that your rating is at 60% is so clear, because what it's describing is that you are an analytical person, right? You like to do that. But unlike a person who is totally analytical, who may not then deal with that other dimension that is part of you, that is that other 40%, you have that other 40%. If you were to see that go all the way over to that scale, and you wouldn't have that other 40%, it's a different type of analytical. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You wouldn't have that intuition. You wouldn't have that subliminal gut intuition element as much. You would be just purely calculating.
And how much do you think, Ray, like at this, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, having had, such an incredible career and having seen this over and over again. How much do you think some of these things do need to be developed or don't? So for example, let's say my score was like a 10% on analytical. Would you be encouraging me to raise my analytical to be more successful? Or let's say it was 100% analytical. Would you be encouraging someone to develop intuition? Or is that not how this works? Explain to us how you see that work successfully.
There are two ways to be successful. To acquire all of the skills and abilities to be successful. That's the tough way. Or to work with people who have those things that you are missing, and work with them well. And that's the easy, most effective way. Yeah. So yes, we could try to change you. The difference is you can move by the equivalent, if you work hard at it, by about one standard deviation of the population. In other words, yes, if you work hard at it, you can become more and more analytical. You practice, you exercise it, and so on. To use that example that you're using, but you have to work on it. You'll change some, and so on. And generally, just realize, like, you don't need to have it all, right? And if you have a complementary relationship, you're helping somebody who needs you, and that's usually the best way to do it.
Another one that I'm looking at here is, I'm just picking out some fun ones that I like. So conceptual, it says, you have a preference to think abstractly and philosophically using theories and models to solve problems. That is very me. And it says 93%, very high. I couldn't agree with that more. I love philosophize. My greatest joy in life comes from two statements. So the first statement is by Ivan Pavlov, and he said, if you want a new idea, read an old book. So I really believe that. I love going into timeless texts and unearthing truths. And then the second statement that kind of defines my work is by Einstein, where he said that if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. And so for me, I like to try and find something that is really complex or intricate and detailed from the past, and try and really extrapolate the essence from it so that I can share it with people. That's kind of where I get my joy and buzz in life.
I can hear that in you. I can empathize with you, by the way, because mine is quite similar. My testing and my inclinations are quite different, quite similar to that. And you could hear the passion, and we could feel the passion. And then we also have to understand that there are other people who are exactly the opposite and get their passion from something different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's, I've also met people, you're right, completely the opposite, who actually love making things more complicated and intricate and mystical.
Yeah, so you can see where people go. Yeah. In a conversation, you will see, do they go down to the detail? And can they separate the detail? Do they want the detail when they want the big picture? Psychologists also call that helicoptering. Everything has different levels, like Google Maps. It's equivalent conceptually of Google Maps. So if you go up and you're looking down, the picture is totally different from that level, and then you go down into it. So people are either inclined to be in one level or another, or some can navigate from the detail to the big picture to the detail. Like when Elon Musk gave me his car to drive. This was way back when it sort of first came out. He was able to navigate it, showed it up in his testing and everything. So he would pay tremendous attention to detail. He showed me then the car and how the button, and you push this and the trunk opens and this does this. And so he was like a jeweler with a piece of jewelry in terms of that design, the detail. And then he goes back to the big picture. And we were talking about like going to Mars and humanity over a period of time. He was able to navigate both of those. That's a rare occasion, by the way, because people don't always. But there are those different levels, and you can see in the conversation where people tend to gravitate to.
Absolutely. And what you're saying is, if someone is actually using this tool in their company or in their family or in their teams, then actually they don't just have to rely on reading people and what they're saying and hearing. They can actually have a framework that supports that, where they can find the parallels.
Yeah, so we connected to the dot collector, for example. We do is put those profiles on, and then when they're interacting, then they're aware of those profiles, and it helps.
Yeah, I saw that great video you made on YouTube about the dot collector, which I highly recommend everyone goes and watches as well, if it's available to the public. But that video really explained it well. And what I found fascinating about the dot collector, let's talk about it, seeing as you mentioned it there, is we're spending all of our days on Zoom right now, every single one of us, even us doing this interview right now. And you were talking about just how there's so many people who have so much to say who are not necessarily even the people speaking at that moment in time. There are so many notes being missed. There's so many in between the line messages that are lost in communication. And you've created this software to be able to actually capture all of that and then share that data in a way that's practical and applicable and actionable?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit background.
Yeah.
I created it in Bridgewater, so people will see it. It allows people to express what they're thinking about. People about what they're thinking on an ongoing basis. And then it allows questions and answers to go back, because what bothered me was only the people who could talk could I get the ideas from. And so there's a big bottleneck. And also I wanted an idea meritocracy, everybody to be able to speak up, and I wanted everybody's thoughts. So that was that. And I also, like the test, wanted to collect the data so that with that data, they could on a day-to-day basis see how what they're thinking. The data is collected so they know how they think again. And also it's been fantastic for daily 360 reviews, because everybody is working with their with others, and they're getting essentially a 360 review simultaneously. So you don't wait to the end of the year for the feedback. You're getting that on an ongoing basis. Now, at this stage of my life, one of the things I'm doing is trying to help others who are running companies and so on. So Eric Yuan, who runs Zoom, and his team runs Zoom, he started it, he's running it. He asked us all to help. And because it had such a big effect on them, he's having it integrated into Zoom. So we expect in January, when you go on a Zoom call like this, there'll be attached to it this dot collector, and it'll allow people to do what I've just described.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing that. That's brilliant. I think we need to make our technology far smarter, and it's great to see you adapting so quickly to bringing something out like that that's going to help teams function. Because I'm doing so many corporate events right now. I speak at potentially nearly a company a day at the moment because of the challenges that people are having with their mental well-being, their stress levels, their disconnectedness, lack of engagement of working from home. And I think this tool is one of those that can really act as a huge solution right now, at least it's in the right direction.
To give an example, like you go in, you have a conversation like this, and there's a group conversation, and you go away and you go on to the next thing, and nothing is saved, and you don't know what everybody's thinking. Okay, that's the way it normally is.
Absolutely.
That's no good. Okay. Just imagine everything is saved and that it's clear. Just imagine you could take a summary of that meeting and you could pass it to somebody and they could hear whatever they want to in that meeting. And okay, that changes things. So for example, one of the CEOs in a big company who's running it, we did the same thing with him. Then afterwards, we took the printout of what happened in that meeting. And then we went through that point by point and we discussed that. And then it's data that goes in. Data is powerful, you know?
Yeah.
But some people get a little bit nervous about it and so on. It gets a little, you got to get a little used to it. Because as you know about psychology, we were talking about this before, in every person, there are two yous, right? There's the upper level you, which is conscious, the conscious you, that is, and you could be logical, you could reason. Then there's the subliminal you, which you actually don't get to see. It's not conscious to you. And it has its own inclinations and it's emotional or maybe inspiration, things that come from the subconscious. And all of those things are operating to determine your behavior. And so by being able to take your analytical you and to then collect the data and use that. So sometimes people have emotional barriers, not that it's logical. Almost everybody who looks at this, these things finds them very logical, but it might get a little bit of used to. Okay, can you give somebody critical feedback? How do you react to critical feedback? Do you want facts? This is another dimension. We were talking about this the last time we talked. Do you want to know what's true? Can you talk about what's true? These are other dimensions to it. So the potential, we're living in a world now in which there's an opportunity to know what's true, evidence-based through data. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want